by another special guest, Rabbi Shoshana Friedman, as we mark climate change and we work as a synagogue community to deepen our commitment to make an impact, fighting climate change, and on doing the work of Tikkun Olam to help the earth. And we're going to have a chance to hear from her a little bit later. And I hope if you've already gotten involved in this work as a part of our community, it'll encourage you to continue that. And if you haven't plugged into the amazing work that our climate justice group is doing, that you'll be inspired to take part. So welcome to everybody tonight. And I hope that you've brought your voices, you've brought your Shabbat spirit, and you brought your open minds as we get a chance to learn and pray together this evening.
Shabbat Shalom, everyone. I'm so grateful to be part of a congregation that does really a lot, so much more than we've done together in a long time, to work for the healing of the earth and the healing of the people who live on the earth in so many fundamental ways. So I'm really thrilled that we will be welcoming Rabbi Shoshana Friedman, and so grateful to Jessica Wooleyan and our Social Action Committee for all the work they've been doing. So I'm really happy to see all of you, and all of you that I can't see, I'm happy to be with you also. You may notice that there's a masked man behind me. This is not an intruder into my home. This is Andy O'Connell, who those of you who've been with us in person know that Andy is our accompanist for most of our Friday night services, and you know that we've in recent weeks tried to incorporate Andy using some high-tech virtual methods. And now, though he may look like a hologram, he is here in 3D, and this is the first time that we are getting to lead together in all of these many, many, many months. So it's a Shehechianu moment, as I was saying earlier, and I do believe and hope and pray that it will be the first of many Shehechianu new beginning moments as we begin to inch our way towards being together in 3D, which will be so much more satisfying. So thrilled that Andy's with us tonight. Want to invite everyone to enter into Shabbat by first of all making yourself able to be receptive to Shabbat, and that might mean physically just rolling your shoulders back and allowing some more space in your physical torso for some breath. You may have been breathing shallowly all day, maybe even all week, and you don't even notice it. However you're breathing right now, don't judge it, but you will see that as you begin to bring your awareness to the breath, as mindfulness traditions teach us, you will begin to breathe more deeply. And I believe that will make you more receptive to receiving the gift of Shabbat. And that's what we do in this Kabbalat Shabbat service. We receive Shabbat. That's the meaning of Kabbalat Shabbat. So do a few really full breaths. Maybe take a moment to think back on your week and what was beautiful, what was hard, what was challenging, what was awe-inspiring. And we'll light the candles at home, and if you have candles and want to bring them into your Zoom square, please do that. And I'm going to change my view so I can see everybody. And you'll see the link is in the chat to our digital prayer book. Feel free to use it or not use it. The important thing is that we are here together, connecting. Hopefully when we come together and connect with each other, when we gather to welcome in Shabbat, I hope that it allows us a chance to connect in a deeper way with ourselves, and that it's sort of a symbiotic relationship. When we connect with community, we're connecting to parts of ourselves that maybe are hidden at times when we're alone, and vice versa. So we're going to say our candle blessing, which is on page 2. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech ha'olam asher kiddushanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu להדליק נר Shabbat. Shabbat Shalom, everyone. We're going to move into welcoming the angels of peace. Maybe we're reminding ourselves that we can be angels of peace for each other. We're going to sing Shalom Aleichem on page 24. Shalom Aleichem, Malachei Hasharet, Malachei Elyon. Mi melech Malachei Hamlachim, HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Boachem leshalom, Malachei Hashalom, Malachei Elyon. Mi melech Malachei Hamlachim, HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Baruchuni leshalom, Malachei Hashalom, Malachei Elyon. Mi melech Malachei Hamlachim, HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Tzeitzchem leshalom, Malachei Hashalom, Malachei Elyon. Mi melech Malachei Hamlachim, HaKadosh Baruch Hu.
We continue to welcome in Shabbat with Psalm 96, which can be found on page 13. It's a psalm that reminds us that our ancestors' connection to the divine was not something that was abstract, that existed in some sort of vacuum. It was very much rooted in nature. And this psalm speaks of trees and fields joining in the praise of God, shouting out in joy, and the oceans rising up. It is very much a sense of connection to the world and a connection to the divine that is inhabiting the entire earth and is connected to the whole earth. And so we join together for Psalm 96 on page 13.
Shiru l'Adonai, shir chadash, shiru l'Adonai, kol haaretz, shiru l'Adonai, baruchu shemo, basru miyom leyom yeshuato, sapru v'goyim kevodo, bechol ha'amim niflotav, ki gadol Adonai, u'mehulal me'od, lo rahu, al kol Elohim, yai lai lai, mikol Elohei ha'amim elivim, Adonai shamayim asa, od ve'hadar lefanav, oz ve'tziferet be'mikdasho, yalai lai lai lai, yalai lai, yalai lai, yalai lai lai lai, yalai lai lai lai, lai 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 lai, lai 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 lai, lai 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 lai, lai 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 lai. Let's turn to Lechado D. We're on page 20 and 21. We'll sing verses 1, 2, 5, and 9. If you're able to rise to greet that presence, that Shabbat bride, that beloved guest. We're so, so grateful to be able to welcome each and every week. Lecha Dodi, לקראת כלה. שבת נקבלה, שמור וזכור לדיבור אחד, השמיענו אל המיוחד, אדוני אחד ושמו אחד, לשם ולתפארת ולצילה לך דודי. לקראת כלה פני שבת נקבלה. לקראת שבת לך ובנך, כי מקור הברכה, מראש מקדם נשוכה, סוף מעשה במחשבה תחילה לך דודי. לקראת כלה פני שבת נקבלה. Verse 5. התעוררי, התעוררי, כי באורך קומי אורי, 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 שיר דברי, כבוד אדוני עלייך נגלה לך דודי. לקראת כלה פני שבת נקבלה. We rise and welcome Shabbat. בואי ושלום, עצרת בעלה, גם בשמחה ובצהלה, תוך אמוני עם סגולה. בואי חלה, בואי חלה לך דודי. לקראת כלה פני שבת נקבלה. Before we move into Baruch Hu, I just want to, and before we have a reading before Baruch Hu, just wanted to welcome those who've joined us after the very beginning of services, and to say we're so delighted to be welcoming Andy O'Connell here with me live, which is coming to you live from Newton, Massachusetts. Andy, thank God, is fully vaccinated, as am I, and because I have kids, they're around but not near us, and so Andy's wearing a double mask, just with an abundance of caution. But we're so glad to be together again. Like, that reminds me of the Muppet song when they're in the Studebaker. I won't break into the song, but so anyway, thank you, Andy, for being here, and I don't have to mess with all sorts of technology to get his beautiful guitar music into the room. So this is a Shehechianu moment, as we were saying earlier. Over to you, Rabbi Schaefer.
How hard do I have to push to get you to sing the Muppet song?
Not too hard.
Not too hard. Maybe at the end of services tonight. As we prepare to rise in body or spirit for the Baruch Hu, the call to worship, I always think about this moment as a gate that is opening. It's a gate that opens in between the Kabbalah, Shabbat, and Mari part of the service. It's a gate that opens each time we have an Aliyah to Torah. And I want to share a brief poem by Alden Solovey as he imagines the gates to the Garden of Eden reopening. It's called The Next Garden. The garden must be overgrown by now, without human caretakers to tend the fertile beds. What would we do differently now if the gates of Eden opened and we were readmitted to paradise. We imagine the gates opening for Shabbat, and we rise in body or spirit for the Baruch Hu.
We're on page 28. Baruch hu et Adonai hamevorach.
Baruch Adonai Hamvorach Leolam Vaed.
Baruch Adonai hamevorach leolam va'ed.
The first two blessings after the Baruch Hu and before the Shema combine a prayer for the evening time and a prayer reminding us of God's love. And I was thinking about the connection between these two things. And I was thinking about a loving parent who, when we were kids, would close the blinds, especially now in these sunny summer months when maybe our children are going to bed while it's still light out. We need those loving parents, those loving caretakers to go around and to close the blinds and help us feel the nighttime and to pass that on as a form of love. So I want to read the Chatimah, the closing blessings for each of these prayers, and I hope you respond by saying Amen. Baruch atah Adonai hama'ariv aravim. Blessed are you, Adonai, who brings on evening. Baruch atah Adonai Ohev Amo Yisrael. Blessed are you, Adonai, who loves your people Israel. We join together for the Shema, which can be found on page 34.
Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. Baruch Shem Kevod Malchuto Leolam Vaed. We're on page 36. ואהבת את אדוני אלוהיך בכל לבבך ובכל נפשך ובכל מאודך, והיו הדברים האלה אשר אנוכי מצווך היום על לבבך, ושיננתם לבניך, ודיברת בעם בשבתך בביתך ובלכתך בדרך ובשוכבך ובקומך, וקשרתם לאות על ידיך, והיו לטוטפות בין עיניך, וכתבתם על מזוזות ביתך ובשעריך, למען תזכרו עשיתם את כל מצוותיי, והייתם קדושים לאלוהיכם. אני אדוני אלוהיכם, אשר הוצאתי אתכם מארץ מצרים, להיות לכם לאלוהים. אני אדוני אלוהיכם, אדוני אלוהיכם emet. Moving into Micha Mocha, our people's song at the sea after the great crossing into freedom, but also into the unknown with that incredible mixture of relief, awe, gratitude, and anxiety. I think we can relate to that moment in so many ways right now, and where we are in the pandemic. The whole range of emotions is really there with us and in us. So as we recall our ancestors, may it help us root ourselves in this current moment with so many emotions. So we're going to move to page 42 for part of our evening blessing. We're just going to focus on the prayer, the part of the blessing that says, Ufros aleinu sukat shlomecha, spread over us the canopy of your peace. I imagine that as an embrace. There's a line by the famous German poet Rilke. He says, the universe holds you in its hands and will not let you fall. So if you can take a moment to imagine yourself just held and embraced by something that you can't see, can't understand, but you can feel it just like you can feel the wind on your skin. You're embraced by an absolute peace and an absolute love. And perhaps if we quiet ourselves as we hope to do on Shabbat, we can access that absolute peace and that absolute love that dwells within us, perhaps around us and between us too. And then we can bring it forward into the world that needs that from us so much. That love, that compassion, and that peace. We're going to sing just that third line down on the page. Ufros aleinu Shabbat Shalom aleinu ve'al kol amo Yisrael ve'al Yerushalayim.
We turn now to the Amidah, which can be found on page 46. And we're going to do something a little different than we do most weeks, which is to frame the space and allow that time for us to take personal prayer. This is actually the traditional approach to saying the Amidah in the evening. It's a silent prayer that's done by each individual. But we're going to begin by saying Adonai Sefatai Titach, praying the opening words together. And then Andy is going to help us create a musical space where we can either meditate, offer our own private prayers, or follow the liturgy in the book. And once we've had some opportunity for private prayer, we'll come together for a prayer for peace, Osei Shalom, on page 62. I invite you to rise in body or spirit as we turn to page 46 for the opening line of the Amidah.
Adonai Sefatai Tiftach Ufi Yagid Tehilatecha. Adonai, open up my lips, that my mouth may declare your praise. Join together with a prayer for peace. Ohabei Shalom bimromav, Uyaseh Shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael, ve'imru amen. Yaseh Shalom, Yaseh Shalom, Shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael. Yaseh Shalom, Yaseh Shalom, Shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael.
Thank you, Andy and Rabbi Berkman. We want to take a moment this evening to offer a prayer for healing for those we love who are suffering illnesses of body, illnesses of mind, and illnesses of spirit. If you are praying for a loved one this evening and you'd like to add their name into the chat, I will read them out loud in a minute. And I want to share the names of those that we are praying for as a community this evening. We are praying for Ken Yenton, Akiva Hillel ben Abraham Yitzhak, Molly Mead, Moralia Bat Shoshana, Vera Thompson, Sydney Jean Pizetsky, Allison Rim, Isaiah Jackson, Brett Cantor, Alan Cohen, Itzik Sadian, all of those who are ill with COVID, Claire Rofinu, Anna, Liesel, Marcia, Alan, Susan, Karen Grossman. We pray for all those whose names were mentioned tonight and those names who are in our hearts. And we join together for the prayer for healing on page 253 in our prayer book.
May the source of strength, who blessed the ones before us, help blessing with refuah shlema, the renewal of body, the renewal of spirit, and let us say Amen.
We wanted to create enough space tonight to be able to hear from Rabbi Shoshana Friedman and to be able to allow people to ask questions. And so we're going to invite her to speak at the conclusion of services tonight. And we're going to move to Aleinu, which can be found on page 282 in our prayer books. I invite you to join me in rising in body or spirit for the Aleinu at the top of the page. Aleinu l'shabeach l'adon hakol, latet gedula liotzer bereshit, shehu notei shamayim v'yosed haaretz, umoshav yikaroho bashamayim ima'al, ushchinatu zo begofhei meromim, hu Eloheinu einod, va'anachnu korim umishtachavim umodim, lifnei melech malchei hamlachim, Hakadosh Baruch Hu, V'nemar v'haya Adonai lemelech al kol haaretz, bayom hahu yeh Adonai echad, u'shemo echad.
At this time, we'll remember those we have loved who are no longer with us in this world. We'll recite Mourner's Kaddish. We'll show it on the screen to be sure everyone who is reciting Kaddish for a loved one has access to it, but it's on page 294 in the book. So if you are observing a yahrzeit or are in a period of mourning for a close loved one, I know some of you here are saying Kaddish during a first 30-day period or a year period after the death of a close loved one. If you want to put names into the chat, please do that. I'll give you a moment. I know that we are remembering as a community Peter Feldman. I know that Karen, you're remembering your mother Norma Weber and your mother-in-law Luz Maria Salamanca. Alan Stark, James is remembering his father Alan. Eugene Starr. Wolf Lasker. Lucille Darren. Tammy Griffin. We think of the many who have lost their lives due to COVID in recent days, and those who have lost their lives to the epidemic of gun violence. May the memories of all those we hold in our hearts today and have brought into our virtual sanctuary today be for a blessing. We're just going to make that the right size so everyone can see. There we go. Yit Gadal v'Yit Kadash Shemei Rabbah V'Alma Yivra Chirutei V'Yamlich Malchutei V'Chayechon U'Vyomechon U'V'Chayei D'Chol Beit Yisrael V'Agala U'Vizmon Kariv V'Imru Amen. Yehei Shmei Rabbah Mevarach Le'alam L'Almei Almaya Yitbarach V'Yishtabach V'Yitpa'ar V'Yitromam V'Yitnaseh V'Yithadar V'Yit'aleh V'Yithalal Shmei D'Kudusha V'Richu Le'ela Min Kol Birchata V'Shirata Tush Bechata V'Nechemata Da'amiran B'Alma V'Imru Amen. Yehei Shlama Rabba Min Shemaya V'Chayim Aleinu V'Al Kol Yisrael V'Imru Amen. Oseh Shalom Bimromav Hu Ya'aseh Shalom עלינו ועל כל ישראל ואמרו אמן. עושה שלום במרומיו, הוא יעשה שלום עלינו ועל כל ישראל ואמרו אמן.
Thank you. Thank you, Rabbi Berkman and Andy, for being here tonight. It is so wonderful to hear you both singing and making music together. And I'm glad that you are both healthy and fully vaccinated and able to be in person. I'm incredibly grateful. I'm going to say this now, even though they haven't had a chance to speak, but to our social action team and to specifically our climate change working group, to Jessica Ulian and to Larry Green for helping to organize the events and bring in tonight's speaker, Rabbi Shoshana Friedman. We're incredibly grateful. Yesterday, I had the honor of helping to clean up part of the Muddy River with members of our community. We were down in Franklin Park, and our job was just to go around and to pick up trash and to help make the space more beautiful, to help protect the wildlife from not eating the golf balls and the pieces of plastic that litter our beautiful green spaces in Boston. And we are going to have another opportunity to do that as a community on Sunday, June 6th, with the Emerald Park Conservancy. And I'm hoping that we can have 25 people be there for that. It's a great opportunity. It is really simple work to do that makes an impact. And when you see those garbage bags pile up, you feel really good about yourself. Plus, if you enjoy using one of those cool trash picking up tools, they have plenty of those. And it's a good forearm workout, as I found out yesterday. Tomorrow morning, this is really important. We have a different start time for our morning with Shir Chadash. Schmoozing is going to begin at 9:15. Rabbi Berkman is going to lead Torah study starting at 9:30. And then I am going to lead an abbreviated service and Torah service starting at 10:15. We will be done around 11. It is the same Zoom link as normal. I hope everybody is able to join us and to learn from this week's Torah portion, Achrei Mot Kedoshim. And I hope everybody saves the date for 2 weeks, week and a half from now, Tuesday night, May 4th. We have a special adult ed program with our two amazing musical talents, Josh Cohen and David Spar, who are going to be offering a class that evening. And so please save the date, Tuesday, May 4th at 7 p.m. I hope you'll be able to join us. And Rabbi Berkman's class is back on next Thursday, 9 a.m.
That's right. I was at a conference, so I wasn't able to lead you last week. So we are back on, and for that class, it's a mindfulness-based look and interaction with the Torah portion. It's for everyone, regardless of background. You can come once, you can come every week. It's drop-in, and it's a really nice 45 minutes to give yourself a chance to check in with yourself, with other members of the communities. We have a lot of Shir Chadash folks there too, and also with our tradition, and see how it speaks to you, and not just to your mind, but to your heart. So it's called Torah for the Heart and Mind, 9 a.m. on Thursdays. All right, so what is happening now? We are going to make Kiddush and Motzi, and then Andy, who I just want to add my thanks again. I mean, you know the old Saturday Night Live skit, like, it's like butter. It's like butter. Like when, I don't know, it's something just, we led together for so long, really for the 3 years before this happened, almost 3 years, I guess. And it's just like, it's like riding a bike. Like we didn't really practice. It just sort of all came back, and it just feels like muscle memory. And it's just such a beautiful experience to be able to do this again. And so thank you. Thank you, Andy. And thank you to the developer of the vaccine. Can't thank them enough. So we'll do Kiddush on page 5. And if you want to... Oh, that's not good. Okay. Kiddush cup sometimes falls apart. But, okay. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam borei peri hagafen. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kitshanu b'mitzvotav v'ratzavanu b'shabbat kodsho b'ahava u'b'ratzon hinchilanu zikaron lema'aseh v'reshit ki hu yom zechila lemikra'ei kodesh zecher letziat Mitzrayim Ivanu Acharta Viltanu Idasha Mikol Hamim Veshavat Kodshecha Yahava Uvratzon Inchaltanu Baruch atah Adonai Mekadesh Hashavat. Amen.
If you have challah at home, please join me in Motzi. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam hamotzi lechem min haaretz. Amen.
So we're going to close with Olam Chesed Yibaneh. Many of you know it by now. From Psalms, we will build a world of chesed, of abundant love and compassion and kindness for all this earth and all who dwell on earth. And I'm sorry, I don't think we have the words tonight. I was so excited Andy and I were going to do this together that I forgot to get the words ready for you. But I think a lot of you know them and they're very simple. Olam chesed yibaneh, ta-da-dai, dai-dai, ya-da-dai-dai. 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 I will build this world from love. Da-da-dai, dai-dai, ya-da-dai-dai. And you will build this world from love. Da-da-dai, da-dai, ya-da-dai-dai. And if we build this world from love, da-da-dai, da-dai, ya-da-dai-dai, then God will build this world from love. Da-da-dai, dai-dai, ya-da-dai-dai. Olam chesed yibaneh, 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 da-da-dai, dai-dai, ya-da-dai-dai.
Thank you, Rabbi Berkman. Thank you, Andy. It's my pleasure at this time to introduce Jessica, the head of our Social Action Committee. And Jessica, thank you for the amazing work you've done the last 2 years organizing us in all of our social action efforts and representing those to the board. Introducing our speaker tonight is the very least of what you do. And we are so grateful for all the work that you put in to make this community a better community. And it's my pleasure to invite you.
Sorry, I had some trouble unmuting. Thank you. That is the nicest introduction I've received in quite some time. I am so excited. First of all, Shabbat Shalom, everyone. I am so excited to welcome Rabbi Shoshana Friedman here with us tonight as part of Climate Action Week. This year, the Climate Action Committee at Temple Ohabei Shalom has decided to work with Dayenu, which is a relatively new multi-generational movement of American Jews confronting the climate crisis. Rabbi Friedman serves as one of Dayenu's rabbinic advisors and is in her own right a well-known activist, writer, parent, and song leader in the movement for climate justice. Rabbi Friedman, thank you so much for being here with us tonight, and we're looking forward to your guidance about what our role can be in confronting this crisis.
Thank you, Jessica. Thank you so much to all of you, to the rabbis and to the whole congregation. It is such a pleasure to be here. I'm not too far away. I've been doing these all over the country, and it just feels like such a treat to like almost be near probably most of you. I live in Roslindale, and many of you may know me from being a fellow Bostonian, and I was the former associate rabbi at Temple Sinai just down the street from Ohabei. I'm now on faculty at Hebrew College, where I was ordained, and also I'm serving as a rabbinic advisor and ambassador for Dayenu, doing these speaking engagements. So I want to first begin by thanking each of you specifically for being here on a night where we're talking about climate change and for dedicating a week to, it sounds like a week and much more as a congregation to facing the crisis. It's natural that a lot of feelings come up. In my own life, I know for years I was in a state of a sort of paralysis of grief and despair around the state of the ecological crisis. And those feelings, when I suppressed them, really got in my way. So the first thing I always do is invite everybody to take a breath and just notice what you might be feeling in your own body as you approach a conversation and a talk about climate change. There might be some fear or trepidation. Sometimes feelings of guilt arise, or numbness, fear, sometimes anger. And there can also be excitement or a sense of relief. And you can just send compassion to all of those feelings. They're all welcome and so normal. We're going to begin this evening with a short text study, and I'm just going to share my screen with you. So back a ways, not where we are right now in the Torah. I want to share with you two texts that have become incredibly important to me in my internal process on thinking about what is it that I'm doing at this late hour as we strive for climate justice. So in Genesis 6, the beginning of Parshat Noach, but Noach found favor with God. This is the line of Noah. Noah was a righteous man, a tzaddik. He was blameless, tamim, in his age. Noah walked with God. So that's from the Torah. And the Kedushat Levi, who is an 18th century Hasidic master, he implies a question in this work. And it's a question actually that the rabbis asked for centuries before Rabbi Levi Yitzchak of Berdichev, who wrote the Kedushat Levi, asked it. And the question is, how can we call Noah a tzaddik when he did nothing to try to prevent the flood? The Kedushat Levi offers this answer. He says, there is a kind of tzaddik who serves God, but is so lowly in their own eyes that they think to themselves, who am I to pray for God to reverse the bad decree? And therefore, they don't pray. Now, even though Noah was a great and blameless tzaddik, he was very small in his own eyes, and he did not have faith that he was a powerful tzaddik with the ability to annul the decree of the flood. In this text, we see this idea of righteousness having a new definition, or one that I do not see in many texts, which is a sense of confidence, a sense of chutzpah. And the Kedushat Levi had was a tzaddik, but he wasn't enough of a tzaddik to embody those characteristics that would have had him stand up to God. And now, some generations later, after the flood, after the Tower of Babel, Genesis 18, our character Abraham, he comes forward to God when God tells him that God is going to destroy the cities of Sodom and Gomorrah. Abraham comes forward and says, "Far be it from you to do such a thing, to bring death upon the innocent as well as the guilty, so that innocent and guilty fare alike. Far be it from you. Shall not the judge of all the earth deal justly?" And God answered, "Okay, if I find within the city of Sodom 50 innocent people, I will forgive the whole place for their sake." Now, a powerful midrash that is I found in the Zohar Chadash, a mystical text from the 13th century, takes these two stories and imagines Noah coming out of the ark. When Noah came out of the ark, he saw the world completely destroyed, and he began crying. And he said, "God, how could you have done this? Why did you destroy your world?" And God replied, "Now you ask me? And when I said all flesh will end, you went into the house of study and you didn't do anything to fix that generation of yours." The Zohar Chadash's narrator then comes in and says, in contrast to that, when God told Abraham that God would destroy Sodom and Gomorrah, Abraham stood before God and tried to save the wicked people of the city. So, if we had more time, I would go to those questions. We're not going to do that. I'm going to stop my screen share. So, it is so easy to be like Noah at the beginning of his story. Who knows what was going on in his mind? Maybe he didn't believe it. Maybe he was paralyzed by the immensity of it and just needed to follow instructions and build the ark. Maybe he was so scared that he just needed to save himself and his family. Whatever the reasons, it is so easy to be like him because it's so hard to face the truth of what's at stake right now. That without massive change, we're hurtling towards a world in which much of the earth is uninhabitable, where our children and grandchildren may not have enough food to eat or clean air to breathe or water to drink, where many major cities will be underwater, where we will have lost so many beloved species and ecosystems. The human psyche can't really handle that as a concept. And so we are often more like Noah. We dissociate, we turn away, we distract ourselves, and we have to in order to function in our daily lives. But that cannot be the totality of what we do. All around the world, people have mobilized by the millions to face the climate crisis head on, despite what are now overwhelming odds against us. And the reason that these two stories of Abraham and Noah strike me almost to the point of when I first found these texts falling to my knees is because Sodom and Gomorrah, remember, they are destroyed. Abraham tries to save them. And he even gets down to, if there are 10 righteous people, will you save the cities? And God says yes. But they're destroyed anyway. And yet, our tradition over and over, if you comb through the rabbinic texts about Noah and constantly comparing and contrasting him to Abraham, over and over, it is understood and said to us that Abraham was the greater tzaddik. Even though he wasn't ultimately successful in saving the city, even though the odds were clearly stacked against him, he tried. And we do not know the outcome of our efforts over these next 10 years to avert the worst of climate change. But if nothing else, I want to communicate tonight that our tradition comes down very clearly on this. And here's a point where I want to just follow instructions. I want to follow the rabbi's instructions and be like Abraham. I want to protest a decree of destruction, even when the odds are stacked against us. We are called by Jewish tradition, ancient Jewish tradition, to individually and collectively be the kind of tzaddikim who are big enough in our own eyes to fight with all we have for the continuation of life, no matter the odds. So Dayenu, a Jewish call to climate action, is an organization, as Jessica said, that has recently started. In fact, it was launched almost exactly a year ago, right at the beginning of the pandemic. The goal is to mobilize Jewish support for climate solutions, to build our collective power with national and global movements, and to raise up a spiritual, religious, and moral voice. The Jewish environmental movement has been around for a very long time, and we have many well-known partners in this work. JCAN, Chazon, so many. What Dayenu is doing is filling a particular niche of doing political policy level organizing to build the political pressure and power of the Jewish community to work for systemic climate change. Put another way, Dayenu was founded to help us move from emulating Noah's silence or his focus on the individual act to emulating Abraham's chutzpah and focus on saving the many. Dayenu is here to support us in being people who do see the devastating reality of what's happening to our world clearly, being people who don't look away, or at least don't only look away, and people who take strategic action to change the system that's leading us to the brink, no matter the odds. So I'm going to tell you a little bit more specifically about Dayenu, and then end with an invitation for how you can get involved. First of all, the name brilliantly has this great double meaning. You know the word from the Pesach Seder, Dayenu, it would have been enough for us. So we hold the name to have two meanings. One is Dayenu. We've had enough. It is enough for us. We've had enough with inadequate responses to the climate crisis, enough with the inadequate political responses, enough with the focus on individual consumer choices. We've had enough with the destruction of our world from the systems all around the global economy. And the second meaning is Dayenu. We have enough. We have what it takes to not magically fix or magically reverse climate change, probably, but to face this crisis with bold political action and spiritual audacity, to have this be a moment where our fullest humanity actually gets to shine in ways we've never imagined. As a Jewish justice organization, our commitment at Dayenu to climate action is grounded in our commitment to human social equity. We were strangers in the land of Egypt. And it's well understood that the impacts of the climate crisis rest disproportionately on those who've been historically marginalized and contributed least to the problem. Like the pandemic, the climate crisis is a force multiplier. It exacerbates historical inequities, but it does impact everyone. And so when we work for climate change, for climate action, we are not just talking about the parts per million of carbon in the atmosphere, but we're talking about creating a more just and equal world here where we live for everybody, regardless of what policy successes lead to in terms of the carbon in the atmosphere. Both need to happen. In order to mitigate the most devastating impacts of climate change, we need to take action on a systemic level. And this is Dayenu's focus. And as an organization, we have four main strategies. Number one is we organize and empower Jewish individuals and communities and institutions to support critical federal and state climate policies, which is the moment that we're in right now. This is a huge week. It's a really big moment, and I'll talk about that in just a couple minutes in terms of climate policy. Number two is we mobilize the American Jewish community to act during key political and cultural moments that are relevant to climate change. We engage with candidates and elections to change the political landscape. We get our hands dirty. We're a 501c3. We don't get involved in supporting specific campaigns, but we do voter turnout and did a very successful campaign in the 2020 election. And the fourth lever of change that we pull on at Dayenu is we're not actively doing it currently because there's so much exciting policy work happening, but eventually we plan to launch a multi-year campaign to end financial backing for the fossil fuel industry, not just the divestment from the new fossil fuel infrastructure, but also hitting the insurance companies that are actually underpinning all of these projects. So there's multiple ways that money is a big player that can actually have a faster impact than policy. So just taking a step back, I'm really impressed and so delighted is not even a strong enough word, really moved and grateful to hear that Ohabei Shalom already has a climate action team, that this is an issue that is not a marginal fringe thing in this community, that you're fully engaging with it. And also that, like most congregations, there's some interest around institutional building upgrades and greening and composting, as well as a systemic. So I wanted to offer a take on how we at Dayenu think about that and why we feel it's really important to focus and to put a lot of resources behind the systemic change, regardless of what you choose to do with the institutional and personal practices. So the message that is really important for all of us to hear is that if every single person and institution significantly lowered our carbon footprint, we would not even come close to avoiding the most catastrophic impacts of climate change. There is at this point no level of personal and institutional action that makes a dent without the other systemic change. And in fact, it's now known that industry, well, I'll say industry and even the big environmental nonprofits for decades, I mean, this was my childhood for sure, and in some cases still, had the message that if we all did our part to change our personal practices, we could save the world. Reduce, reuse, recycle, carpool, and that was the jean jacket I had when I was 10, had those buttons on it. And you know, it's possible that in 1990, if everybody in the industrialized world did those practices and held companies and industry accountable to those standards, that things would be different now. But by far that did not happen. And so we have run out of time for only focusing on personal practices. And I'm just gonna do one more screen share because this is one of my very favorite, though it's a powerful and often painful to see comic. Just see, where does it go? So this is It's That Easy by Tommy Siegel. This is, I'm 38, so this is really my life. I was born in 1982. It says, it's that easy. The 1980s, pick up your litter and save the earth. The 1990s, recycle and you can save the earth. The 2000s, reduce your carbon footprint and you can save the earth. 2010s, completely restructure global economic systems and you may be able to save a remnant of humanity. It's one of those like, ha 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 ha, kind of funny. I quote that in almost every talk I give because we are at a time where it is just so important to be doing the personal practices that feed us and that help bring us closer to community and that build our own sense of resilience, and not to confuse those with the broader activism that is needed. And oops, where did I go? Okay, apologies. And I want to say that I take my own personal practices very seriously. I haven't been on a plane in 4 years. I buy very few new clothes, reducing animal product consumption. But for me, these practices are akin to spiritual practice. They ground me. They are signals of the seriousness of my intent. They are a big part of my identity. And I wear them in terms of how I am in the world and in how my home is and how I get around. But to have an impact on the climate crisis itself at this late hour, I know that I also need to be active in the movement for systemic change. And that's the level where Dayenu works. because we have other wonderful partners like Chazon who have great resources in the other practices. So what do I mean by systemic change? Systemic change means cutting demand for fossil fuels, cutting supply for fossil fuels, keeping the fossil fuels underground where they belong. It means at this point a just transition away from fossil fuels and a just economic recovery from COVID. It means creating millions of living wage, clean energy jobs, investing in communities hardest hit by the pandemic and by systemic racism. And it means changing our agriculture and food systems, protecting and reforesting wilderness, and challenging misinformation campaigns. So, we'll probably be done by next week or something. So that's the work of the entire movement. Dayenu itself is focusing specifically at this point on policy around energy and on the Jewish community. So the first campaign that we did was calling on the presidential candidates during the run-up to the election to pledge to pass a just green recovery. And we were part of the group of organizations that were pressuring the Biden then campaign to move his climate plan way forward, which was an incredibly successful campaign on him as a candidate. And then we ran the Chutzpah 2020 Get Out the Vote campaign, in which Dayenu, which again launched just a year ago. So, and I'm not on staff there, but I'm very proud of the incredible work that the organization has done, because over the summer and into the fall, more than 800 volunteers from Dayenu reached out to 800,000 voters who were known to have a concern around climate change and made sure to get them to the polls. And so in the last year, look how far we've come, because just a year ago, candidate Biden did not have a climate plan, anything like what we're hearing today. And it's amazing to have been part of pushing him as a candidate and now as a president to take such a bolder stance. As I'm sure all or most of you know, President Biden has just announced an incredibly exciting goal of reducing US greenhouse emissions by half from 2005 levels by the end of the decade, by 2030. And it's important to state that this goal isn't enough. It's not the goal that science demands, but it is by far the most ambitious emissions goal we've seen from a US president. And we need to mobilize behind it. Even though it's not enough, we need to mobilize behind it, even as we continue to push to build the political will for what science does demand, which is net zero carbon emissions well before 2050, all while building an equitable and just economy for everybody. It is difficult to overstate the potential of the particular moment we're in. President Biden's multi-trillion-dollar recovery plan, the American Jobs Plan, would rebuild and transform the nation's infrastructure. It would put millions of Americans back to work. It would invest in renewable energy, reforest land, change agricultural practices, and ideally leave nobody behind economically. But this is only if Congress acts, because the president only has as much power as he has to enact legislation, and he needs Congress's support, which is where we come in. So we need to help him make good on this promise by pressuring Congress to pass a jobs and recovery plan that does all the things we want it to do. And this would be amazing. It would be the largest post-COVID investment in clean energy and transportation in the world, and the most significant federal investment in our economy since World War II. But it only happens if we organize. So here are my invitations, and I'm going to put some links in the chat, knowing, please follow whatever your Shabbat practice is doing. I can also send these out so that congregational, it can be in an email later. This is the sign up link where you can stay in touch with Dayenu itself and learn about opportunities for learning and action. You can look us up on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter, of course. The really important action right now is to make a call to Congress. And here's the point I want to make. Even though we're in Massachusetts and our federal delegation is really progressive, I have Ayanna Pressley as my representative. She knows from climate justice. It's still incredibly important that I call her, and I did, because she's getting so many calls and she has so much priority that she needs to prioritize. And this is true of any progressive representative. we have to be, the line that I've heard that I like is, we have to be the wind in their sails. We have to help carry them through so they know that their constituents have their back when it comes to climate and climate justice issues. If we just assume that, oh, it's Elizabeth Warren, she's going to do the right thing, she may or may not. We need to mobilize, even though we're in Massachusetts, and we all have friends and family in other states. So it's also an opportunity to galvanize those folks. So making the call to Congress is very fun. I'll say it's a very easy action, and I would be really moved to know that many of you have taken it, because you actually just type your number in and it patches to your phone, and you just make the calls. The phone makes the calls for you. So the last piece that I want to talk about, and I'm aware I'm close to time and that this is the really important part, so we will get there, is the other invitation is to gather fellow congregants and start a Dayenu circle. And this is something that I'm really, really delighted to share that Ohabei Shalom is already in the beginning stages of, and that Larry Green is the point person for Dayenu at Ohabei Shalom. And this is where the power building really comes in. So on your green team, as you figure out what to do, I would suggest, and I spoke to Jessica about this too, I would suggest that you have a subgroup of folks who are working on the building upgrades and the composting and the very physical community building practices within Ohabei, and a group of folks who are charged with mobilizing the systemic climate justice work through Dayenu. But Dayenu is not a narrowing force. So if you are a Dayenu circle, you're going to be tapped into curated strategic campaigns at the federal level, but you'll also get support for connecting to other Dayenu circles in Massachusetts, of which there are many that are either started or beginning to start, so that we as the Massachusetts Jewish climate concerned community can be showing up and supporting the state level actions. You also, as a Dayenu circle, get toolkits and resources, a guide to doing district meetings with representatives at any level of government, and a guide to how to start Dayenu circles if any of you would want to start like another one in your neighborhood, teachings and music that you can build into your gatherings. You get trainings and briefings on how to phone bank and text bank, how to organize a district meeting, different strategies and tactics, partnering effectively with local climate justice groups. And there's the built-in national network. We have close to, I'm actually not sure the latest number, but close to 100 Dayenu circles at this point that are starting or in some stages of starting across the country. So you get tapped into this network. And there's also coaching and support available through one-to-ones with Dayenu staff. It's an all hands on deck moment in human history. This is a time of dire urgency and possibility. And as we all know, the next 10 years are critical to avoid the most devastating impacts of climate change. But we are so incredibly lucky to be alive right now, to be here when there is a diverse movement of people fighting for climate justice, where this is no longer a fringe issue, where people are waking up. And the Jewish community needs to join the other faith groups, the Black, Brown, Indigenous communities, young people, people of all colors. While we're only 2% of the population, we have a really strong voice in American society and politics. And now we are showing up. Dayenu, we have what it takes. Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom. Thank you, Rabbi Friedman. We are so happy that you could join us tonight. I know that you can't stay with us.
I could say 2 minutes just to take questions, because that was
okay. There is one question in the chat, which I'm hoping you can answer, which is, does Dayenu accept people who are not Jewish to be a part of their circles?
Oh, yeah.
And then I will refer people to rabbishoshana.com. If they have specific questions that they think only you can answer,
yes.
They can find you there, as well as your incredible music and your song.
Thank you. And I want to actually mention also that the JCAN conference is this Sunday. The Jewish Climate Action Network in Boston is running a national conference this Sunday. There's a lot of incredible things. And I will be leading a singing workshop just for an hour in the afternoon. So I'd love to see anyone there. We're hoping I'd sing tonight. I will be singing Sunday.
Great.
Thank you all so much. Shabbat Shalom.
Thank you. Shabbat Shalom.